What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And it's often been said in comments and conversation, how come criminal organizations and gangs have not followed the model of the Italian mafia, particularly on the East Coast, in how they took over companies and got, county money and this and that, right? Some real racketeering stuff beyond just selling drugs and killing people. Well, the Bloods, the Tombstone Bloods, have tried that, right? And they just got indicted. So the circumstances around that is pretty interesting. But then also Jatik Smith, the leader, right, alleged leader of this gang, who's been indicted before and has some sex offenses, and we're going to get into all that as well. But it's alleged that Jatik Smith in 2019 took control of first response cleaning, right? It's a company that already existed before, but the Bloods, Tombstone Bloods, based out of Staten Island, had muscled their way in there and taken control of the organization. I don't know how that came about. But what first response cleaning did was like when places are burned down, when there's fire damage, when there's extreme water damage, they're the company that comes in to clean up that stuff, the asbestos abatement and moving all the trash out. And so they don't do the repairs, but they do the cleanup after things like that, in particular fires. And apparently there's a whole industry around it. They call them fire chasers, kind of a play on ambulance chasers, because oftentimes it's these companies that will pull up to the scene of a fire while the fire is still going and offer their services, right? But then there's also adjusters, right? Insurance adjusters. And so a public adjuster works for a property manager and says, hey, I'll take care of the insurance stuff. I'll do all this. You just got to give me a cut once the insurance company cashes you out, right? But those adjusters recommend people to come in and do the cleanup, just like people that come in and do the cleanup can recommend adjusters, right? And so there's an adjuster included in this indictment. One of the big kind of examples is of what they did allegedly is in 2021, there was a big fire at this apartment building slash kind of housing project, subsidized housing in Jackson Heights in Queens. And it was all over the news. There was a big story last year. It left 500 people displaced, right, without a place to live. The investigation wound up coming back that it was an electrical fire from an overloaded power strip. That's not challenged in the indictment, although a lot of people think that that's an odd way to have such a huge fire, right? It took 12 hours for the fire department to put it out. 21 people were injured. First response, the organization or the company that's run by Jatik Smith now, right, by the Tombstone Bloods, they got $24 million contract to clean that place up. 3 months later, there were still 100 people homeless. They had over 60 people that were in hotels throughout the city, paid for by the Red Cross and that kind of stuff. And a lot of those people complained because they had to schedule visits with the property manager to go see what kind of property they could salvage, right? But first response also did security, you know what I mean? And so they controlled who came in the building and who didn't. And there's people who say, there's residents who say that as they were leaving with some of their property, they were literally stripped of that property. It was thrown back into the apartments or it was given to the property manager. And everybody basically said that when they came in, their jewelry was missing, their valuables were missing, all kinds of stuff was missing. And so the allegation is that first response was stealing from these places that they were sent to clean up. You know what I mean? But it's not just that. It's also said that that they took control of the whole industry, where they started controlling the rotation of other companies that did this kind of work. They would decide which companies got to go to which jobs, and obviously, you pay, you get to go. They started controlling how much they could make. They wanted taxes, basically a percentage. So they really did some Italian mafia type shit, right? Like, this is garbage company, you know, this is trash company type activities, in that they took over an industry that is government funded, even though it's through insurance and stuff. In a sense, it's kind of government funded, and they worked the system, and they punked everybody else in the industry, and they basically did whatever they wanted to. They smashed on people that worked for other companies. They took videos of it and sent it to folks like, hey, if you don't get in line, this is what's going to happen. In the indictment, it's a trip because they're not charged with any theft. They're not actually charged with stealing anything. They're charged with conspiracy and conspiracy through violence, and that's kind of insurance, basically like insurance fraud type stuff. Jatik Smith got arrested in Puerto Rico, right? I think the rest of them are got. I believe that there was 12 of them. Some people in the industry, now that they're arrested, are saying that this is actually pretty common. And while first response was the leader, and they changed the game in terms of how that stuff works, in being controlled by a criminal organization, that there are others that are jockeying to kind of do the same thing. And so I have no idea if that's true or not. But let's look at this dude, Jatik, right? Jatik Smith, he goes by the name Teak in the streets. So his background is interesting. In January 2005, he pled out to felony sex charges. He had gotten head when he was 19 from a girl that was under 15. And he also admitted that he basically manipulated or encouraged a girl under the age of 17 to engage in some activities while being videotaped. And so he's been a registered sex offender since 2005. That itself, kind of, you would think, might put him at odds with being a leader of criminal organizations and having the authority and stature that he did. I think some of that stuff was associated with pimping. And while I don't condone or encourage that activity, I think on a hood level, people tend to turn a blind eye to that, right? Like, oh, you're on Megan's Law, so to speak. You know, you're on Megan's Law because you was running females, or you was just doing some hood stuff, right? To me, it is what it is, and it's all wrong. But nonetheless, so dude's a registered sex offender. He got sentenced between 18 months and 4.5 years for that, right? September 2011, he's back on the block. He beats an attempted murder case. In that situation, he allegedly gave a 22 to a fellow gang member and then sanctioned that dude to go whack somebody that was having some hood conflicts. The person didn't die, but he got charged with attempted murder. He beat that. He got found guilty of first-degree assault, right? He wound up getting that back in court, and that got tossed because one of the key witnesses, turns out they perjured themselves and lied. And so he got misdemeanor criminal solicitation and got time served after like a year. He was already out. June 2013, he gets shot in the leg and the cheek. It's suspected that he shot back, but was never charged for that. But they found multiple caliber bullet shells, and I guess the position of them suggests that when he got shot at, he shot back. But by the time the police got there, there's no gun. So who knows if it's true or not. June 2014, he gets indicted with 23 other people. So this is not the fire cleaning company, right? This is a previous indictment, 2014. Him and 23 others get indicted in what they call Operation Jersey Boys. Now you gotta be careful, because Operation Jersey Boys, spelled with a Z on boys, is actually a mob, like an Italian mafia case, right? A federal case. Operation Jersey Boys with an S is these dudes. So there's a 1-year investigation into them. They were all on Staten Island for drug trafficking. They said it was a drug trafficking ring that was largely responsible for the rise in heroin use on Staten Island. They were responsible for most, if not all, of kind of the high-profile violence that happened in the North Shore area of Staten Island. They had a 24-hour phone line where they took orders for heroin, Molly, and cocaine. And so this dude was caught up in this indictment as well, right? Teak. he wound up pleading out to felony possession of a controlled substance because he had some coke in his waistband when they got busted on a drug bust. And then he got a misdemeanor conspiracy for tampering with a witness. But not in this case. That was like a year prior. And so in 2015, he got sentenced to 4 to 6 years, right? And in that indictment, they said that group, which he wasn't put forward as the leader of that group at the time. It was Tombstone Bloods and another crew, who I don't know the name of. Those two together were the target of this conspiracy, right? So he's not identified as the leader necessarily. The indictment linked them, though, those two crews, to 29 shootings over 6 years, including the murder of Teek's sister, when folks were gunning for him, missed, shot her in the neck, and killed her. They did a raid in November. So the indictment comes down, I believe, in June, right? Of 2014, right? And so, yeah, the indictment comes down in June. The November before that, they raid one person's house. They find $90,000 in cash, 70 grams of cocaine, 2 BMWs, 6 cell phones, a scale, narcotics packaging, everything else, right? So they find all that, but that's the only arrest related to this indictment that happens before the indictment is unsealed, right? So that's in November. Then in June, they raid a bunch of places, and that's when the indictment comes out. They find 3 pounds of weed, 80 grams of crack, 150 milligrams of Molly, 6 pistols, cash, cell phones, all that other stuff, right? So that's interesting, right? It's always interesting when one person gets busted, and then a period of time later, a bunch of folks associated with that one person also get busted for activities that they were all involved in. And that could happen for various reasons. I ain't putting a label on nobody, you know what I mean? But it is what it is. So this dude, Jatik Smith, who knows how much time he's gonna get for this? He seems to skirt from really harsh consequences. But I'm not a student of New York law, right? And so maybe this stuff is not unusual. Everywhere that he's mentioned in the press, he's identified as a gang leader. They also mentioned that he's a registered sex offender. Makes for a story. But I was interested in this because, again, of this idea that, hey, how come criminal organizations and gangs don't go the Italian route, man, and just get their money? And Jatik apparently had the same idea. And there was a level of success at it, right? I mean, it's 2022. They got in 2019. That's not a long time, but there is a blueprint there. And not that I'm encouraging people to engage in criminal activity or engage in conspiracies, because the end result of this is what the end result of all that behavior is. You wind up indicted and going to the feds. But it seems that there is a push by what we would consider street gang members to do things like this. And I would not be surprised, if the same thing is happening in other places, which I've heard that it is, but I don't have a lot of details, and there's not indictments, people aren't busted for it, so I'm not gonna do a video about it. But I have heard of situations in which other street gangs have infiltrated industries, and I would suspect that that's gonna continue, and it makes sense. The problem though with street gangs is the beef, right? Like that other indictment of them running the drug ring and that kind of stuff on Staten Island. Had there not been 29 shootings, a lot of them receiving a lot of press attention. I think within those 29 shootings, 3 or 5 people got killed or something. Had there not been that dynamic, it's much more likely that their drug hustling would have continued for longer, right? Violence brings police attention. Violence scares the public. And so, and violence can get people elected and can get people, unelected and kicked out. And so there's a political motivation to address violence. And to some degree, in some form or fashion, violence should be addressed because people should not just be killed walking on the street. People should not be killed in mistaken identities. But so that's the issue though with gangs. You know, the Italian mob, their various families fought with each other and they had some violence too. But at least from my understanding of their get down, the in large part it was about money. In large part, it was trying to distance yourself from violence. Now, power is essential. Who's going to be in charge? Who's taking orders from who? And so power struggles will lead to violence. But this old turf stuff, like, hey, bro, you're from this hood and I don't like this hood type stuff, um, that would be what would hinder street gangs from having any real long-term success in this stuff. Ideally, man, just let go of that stuff and get yourself into some industries and have the long-term success and don't have the violence. That would be cool, right? Create opportunities for your people. The business acumen is there. The knowledge is there. It You just got to get away from the hood stuff, right? That's what's going to hold you back. And so, anyways, help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it, and help your community, man, because they need you. Check out the other content. Please subscribe to the Homie Heart Check, which is a new channel I have that discusses addiction and mental health. And I'll see you guys next time.